no numbers, there's no pictures, there's no videos, there's no gameplay. I don't like it.
Yo, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. Today, I am going to be going behind the scenes on Sunrise Stories. So, if you guys don't know, I have been writing these Free Realms stories since last year. And I did a behind the scenes on Luck of the Draw. Luck of the Draw was the first story. It was basically the first story before this one. You can call it a prequel if you want. I guess that's what you can call it. But I wrote that back in the summer of 2022. And yeah, I finally got this done after 6 months. Not going to explain why in this video. I'll explain another one about why it took so long. But yeah, this is the sequel to Luck of the Draw. It's a direct sequel. Because if you've read Luck of the Draw, you'll know how it ends. I basically end it on saying, everything's like hunky dory. Everyone lives life how they live it. Like it's all sunny, And then for Sunrise Stories, basically there's a year of time that's passed. This whole thing goes over like everything that happens after Luck of the Draw. So like there's characters that come back from Luck of the Draw. There's characters that I bring in from comics, not a ton. I also include like stories I wanted to write, stories that tie into what happened in Luck of the Draw, etc. So it's a lot. So for this behind the scenes, what we're going to be doing is it's different from how I did Luck of the Draw. Luck of the Draw, I went through every single chapter. It made super like hour-long videos. It was crazy. It was nuts, and I don't want to do that again. I might do that for my next story that I want to write. But for this one, we're just going to be going over one story at a time per video. So for this one, we're not going to be doing Regret because Regret I have already done. It's in the playlist. If you guys want to check it out, please do. For anyone who has not read Luck of the Draw and wants to read this story, read Luck of the Draw first because, again, it's the prequel. It's the first story before this one. You got to read it because, honestly, even though I've finished this, I still like Luck of the Draw more because it was just so much fun to write and I had so much passion for it. It was a fun time to write that whole thing. So, without a further ado, let's get into it. So I've already gone over Regret in another video, so you guys can go ahead and read or watch that video. It's like 26 minutes, I think. But we're going to be getting into Royalty. So Royalty, the story behind this, it's kind of like in Luck of the Draw, Valerian was a part of the story. She wasn't like a huge part. She came in at like not towards the end of the story, but like kind of like 3/4 into the story she came in. And I wanted to give her more story, so I wanted to kind of touch on her life, her past, her, all that sort of stuff, while also tying in new story elements. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, Royalty. A year had passed since the Glum invasion. Sacred Grove looked like its old self, but it felt different, like something had changed. Still, I knew it was my home, and I had to defend its people. Being queen is more important than thinking about what Lovely. I have to edit already. That's cool. I do think I proofread what it. There we go. See? I thought I proofread, and then I don't. It's crazy, dude. What it was like years ago. I got up from my bed and opened the curtains to see Sanctuary all bright and gleam. I didn't feel like sleeping in, so I decided to start the day early and productive. I put on my tiara and set out to make Sacred Grove the best it could be. I went downstairs and was greeted by the Pixie Guard. Most of them were new to the Royal Palace, since I had put my trust in the old guards to protect Memorial Caverns at all costs. After the invasion, I didn't want to risk her history being destroyed. I wanted everyone to remember what had happened when my mother ruled as queen and when I did as well. So, For anyone that doesn't know what happened in Luck of the Draw, I'm very confused as to why you're, watching these when, if you haven't read Luck of the Draw, do it. But the whole story of Luck of the Draw is, the whole point of that story, there's like a huge Gloam invasion that happens in that story. It's pretty huge. It's pretty important. And throughout all of these stories, not all of them, but most of them, that invasion is going to be mentioned because it's such a important point in Sacred Grove's history, and it does need to be mentioned. So yeah, this necklace she gave me was a part of a link that Binding Lavender and I, she had one, and she also had one, and if either of us were to die, Sacred Grove would be nothing but freshly light soil. So I wrote something in Luck of the Draw that I thought was really interesting, and I thought like it might make more sense as to why I wanted to link certain things together. And one thing I wanted to link is if Lavender, or her name is Darkthorn, if Lavender were to die, I want to think that something in Sacred Grove would happen. I want there to be some important thing to all of Sacred Grove, and I think like I wanted to tie stuff like the Heartseed together, because Darkthorn did take the a part of the Heartseed with her to Briarwood, and I thought that was like an important story point. So I made a connection like, hey, if either of them die, Sacred Grove kind of goes to rubble, and I might play more into that when I write more, but I think that's kind of like a super important point in the story. But yeah, so let's keep going. When she took part of the Heartseed with her, it weakened our connection to each other, and that seed hasn't stopped crying since. So I do put an image here, and we'll talk about it. Reminded me of Mother whenever we started to bicker like children. She would become upset and wish we would just get along, but since the day she died, things between us have never been the same. But I hope one day that will all change. So if anyone has ever seen the Heartseed in game, I did put a picture. The pictures, I swear to God, like, I don't like whenever you read a book, it's usually nothing but text. I like having like a visual novel to my stories. That's what I did in Luck of the Draw, because I thought it was so boring to just have text and you have to picture everything in your mind. If you have an image, it helps, and I think that's like, I don't know, I like visual novels. I think that's really cool. But yeah, so the Heartseed in game is actually crying, and I was trying to figure out why it would be crying, and I think like I didn't write it into Luck of the Draw, but I wrote it here saying, hey, it's crying because the Heartseed got separated. So yeah, I went to the Royal Study to go through all the decrees we had made over the years. Some were outdated and old, but others looked like they were brand new. I read over a couple of them to find out that they were never released to Sacred Grove and signed by my mother. Thoughts ran through my mind why she would have kept unpublished decrees, but it occurred to me she never got the chance to give them to anyone. I gathered all the ones she wrote that didn't have a royal stamp on them and started to read over every single one. But that's when I heard something outside. I looked out the window above me and saw one of the guards and elf talking. I decided to get a closer look. I opened the palace doors and they turned to look at me. Then the guard said, "Queen Valerian, got an ambassador all the way from Silver Hills asking for an audience with you." He waved at me and exclaimed, "The name's Chugozaitok Rylari." Representative of Silver Hills, but my friends call me Chugsy. So, his name and title seem a bit too long, but I assume that's how every elf in Silver Hills is named and birth. So, if you guys don't know, again, read Luck of the Draw. But Chugsy was a character that I wanted to touch on, because in Luck of the Draw, I introduced the locations that never made it into Sacred Grove, or never made it into the game. I thought that was a super cool thing to do, and I thought that was super original because, these locations were named, never put into the game. I thought, hey, why not introduce them? So in Luck of the Draw, Chugsy is he's an important character, I would say. He's like, I believe, not the first, but the second new character towards the end of the story that you meet. But Chugsy and Valerian have never met. This is kind of that story where it's like, hey, I want these two to meet. I think it's important. It's super important. Like this story and then the last one in this whole thing, important. Very important. So yeah, let's keep going. I smiled and shook his hand, then said, "Glad we can finally be neighbors again. My mother spoke highly of the elves and the royal scrolls before she passed years ago." He frowned and said, "Sorry to hear that. I'm sure she was a great queen of Sacred Grove." I nodded and said, "She was, but I'm trying my best to fill her shoes. But enough with talks of the past. Allow me to welcome you to my home." He nodded and we went inside. I showed him around, but he didn't seem impressed at all. So I asked, "I take it your home doesn't look like this?" He laughed and said, "If you saw my home, you'd want to move there in a heartbeat. As far as I know, we're the only realm that has technology far advanced than what's available here." I smirked and asked, "Are the warp stones not what you would call advanced?" He shook his head and said, "The piece of rock outside your front lawn? It's neat, I suppose, but not what I'd call advanced." So, there's a piece of text on the Free Realms wiki that states the elves are supposedly the smartest creatures in all the lands. That's just fact, apparently. I'm assuming that's fact in any like world where elves are involved. They are the smartest. So I wanted that to kind of carry over into this story, not to make Chugsy sound like egotistical or anything like that, but he does have a point. You know, if Sacred Grove, if all they could do was, you know, use some energy they found in Silver Hills, there's something completely different there, like, he's probably not that impressed. So continuing, I rolled my eyes and asked, "Anyways, what brings an ambassador to Sacred Grove?" Oh, and by the way, I just want to mention this. So Chugsy kind of got appointed a new role in Luck of the Draw. I believe I mentioned it. I believe he was like I forgot what it was. He was Archmagus, I think, or something like that in Silver Hills, and he got exiled. I'm pretty sure that was written in the wiki. If it wasn't, I wrote it in because I wanted things to make sense. Basically, he's now an ambassador for Silver Hills. So just to clarify, okay? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I wrote it in. He sat down and looked around and said, "Well, since you and your wizards broke down the crystal barrier, I was appointed ambassador for my people, and my first assignment was to get to know the Queen of Sacred Grove." I thought for a good minute about his task. No one has ever asked me about, well, me. I cleared my throat and asked, "What would you like to know?" He smiled and asked, "Before the Glum invasion, what was it like being queen? Was it easy?" I shook my head and said, "Since I've been queen, it's been beyond easy. My mother was murdered, and I had to take over as queen. It seemed impossible to keep going at the time. My sister, Lavender, was blamed for the murder, as well as poisoning me and putting me into a deep sleep. In my place, my advisor, Joffrey, exiled both her and our royal Chugwood guards. I had no idea any of this was happening until two young heroes gave me an antidote to the poison, and I woke up. They discovered Joffrey was the one behind the murder and poison. He planned to overthrow the crown and rule over Sacred Grove. I told Lavender what had transpired, and she still hates me to this day, because I couldn't do anything to stop him." So, I am including comic things. A lot of, like, I read the comics, the Free Realms comics. I did a review video for it if you guys want to watch that, but I do want to include a lot of stuff from the comics into stories going forward, and I think this is part of that. I wanted to sort of make that canon, and there is, in the comics, Lavender, like, I guess, it's so hard to figure out, because, like, Lavender has a sort of, like, there's still a sister bond there, in the comics, and it's hard to tell, like, if they're, like, if they love each other or not. I think, like, the feelings aren't quite mutual. I think they're quite divided. And I wanted to, like, touch on that more and, like, kind of choose a path for, like, Darkthorn, aka Lavender, to travel. So yeah, it's all very, like, I wanted to include some comic stuff, but I do want to change stuff around to make sense, you know? But yeah, let's continue. Chugsy looked at me in shock and said, "Wow, that is a lot to take in, Your Majesty. But whatever happened to Joffrey? In Silver Hills, we'd send our advisors to the Crystal Fields." So, I actually wrote this in Luck of the Draw. Again, if you haven't read it, do it. But there was these Crystal Fields that I thought were a really cool idea. Just like, hey, let's throw in some weird thing that's in Silver Hills that probably isn't in Sacred Grove, and one of those being is a crystal field, because there's that crystal barrier. There's got to be like crystal fields. The crystal fields can explode. It's wild that I include that in, but yeah, if you it's like if you touch the crystals or something, or if like something like that, if you were to touch them or something, like they basically explode. So it's very dangerous. It's super dangerous, but I thought it was a really good thing to include. And that Valerian has no idea what he's talking about, so he's like, what do you mean? But yeah, let's keep going. I had no idea what he meant by that, but I said his crimes would not go unpunished. We clipped his wings, sent him to Black Forest for exile. Again, Black Forest being another location in Sacred Grove that I did. Black Forest, I think, was a huge part of Luck of the Draw. It's towards the end of the story. So that's where Joffrey is. It's said in the comics, I believe, that he got thrown in jail. But like, I thought that was like too good of like, oh, he's in jail, he can't do anything now. I thought it would be cool if Joffrey's story kind of like is hinted at in this story. So he's in Black Forest for exile. Now, he wasn't named in Luck of the Draw because at the time, like, I didn't really think of that character. But I do want that to be kind of a staple point going forward. So anywho, he nodded and said, makes sense. Can't have an untrusted advisor on your council. I think that should be good enough for my first task as an ambassador. Got to make it my way for Glimmer Deep. But I'm going to actually edit. See, this is great. I can just edit on the go. I can proofread while I'm doing this. Crazy. Got to make my way for Glimmer Deep, but before I go, I have one question for you. I looked at him and said, fire away. He got closer to me and asked, how'd you actually take down that crystal barrier? Because I tried to do it for years and nothing worked, yet you and a few wizards managed to do it in minutes. So what's your secret? So there is actually, at the end of Luck of the Draw, the kind of epilogue, I write in that Valerian does certain things to make Sacred Grove more open, like taking down the crystal barrier, opening up Glimmer Deep, stuff like that. And it's just said that wizards do it, and I wanted to kind of expand on that, so let's keep going. So what's your secret? I smirked at him, then brought out a small pouch from my pocket and took the object out of the pouch. I said, this is the Gleamstone. In resemblance to the Glumstone, this was how I brought down the crystal barrier. The wizards didn't actually do anything to bring it down, but they provided a story to those who wondered how it was done. He looked at me in shock and asked, way I hear it, that little stone had a brother who corrupted Sacred Grove. Why risk your home for mine? I sighed and said, what Darkchi did was reckless. I've had this since Iani passed. She told me when it shattered, she wanted to reforge it. Since the stone created the crystal barrier, I thought there was a way to undo it. So for the good of the realms, I took it down. So, I did want to talk about this because introducing this kind of object into the story kind of complicates things. There's this thing that in Luck of the Draw, this main, like, you call it what you want. It's called a Glomestone. That's what it's called in text anyway. It's this Glomestone. It's just like, it's got like red, blue, yellow, green, and it's a shard. It's basically a shard that Darkchi uses throughout the entire story. He's the one who made it in the first place, and then the four heroes protect all these shards. They keep them safe. But yeah, so that's kind of how that goes. I wanted to, like, I don't know. This is like a very, like, wild moment in the story where I reveal, hey, there's this thing called the Gleamstone. I wanted there to be a secondary object. Like, there's a brother to the Glomestone. And it looked funny enough, the Glomestone, I like that I basically inverted the colors on this image to make it like it's the same image, but like inverted. I like how the Glomestone looks more like peaceful and friendly than this one. It's just, I find it really funny. But yeah, so I wanted to introduce this into the story because I feel like if there was a Glomestone, there had to have been a Gleamstone. Never was mentioned in any text, so I kind of made it up. But I think it's a cool story element to add into things to kind of escalate the story to make it like, oh, so there was a Gloamstone, now there's a Gleamstone. So yeah. So continuing, he shook his head and said, that stone should have been destroyed. It trapped me in Sacred Grove for over a decade. Have you forgotten about the heroes that sacrificed their lives to see its brother destroyed? Someone's gonna find out what happened at Snow Hill and take that thing when they do, and it's only a matter of time. So I did want to mention that the Gleamstone was used in the past. So like, I think it's kind of how the Unbinding was started. It played a part in the Unbinding and how the crystal barrier was forged. I want to think that's how everything happened, because, you know, there has to be like these powerful objects that do these certain things. It can't just be like, it happened. It just happened, bro. It came about, you know. I think there has to be like certain objects that did these certain things. So anywho, I put the stone back in the pouch and said, let them try. This is the only way I'll be able to keep the peace in Sacred Grove. What they did to stop the Gloam corruption will not be forgotten, but I won't let something like that happen ever again, not while I'm still queen. He clenched his fist, then released and said, I'd watch your back then. That stone is dangerous and can fall into the wrong hands. Bryce knew that about the other stone and still swore to protect this place. He was my friend and swore to protect this place. But all I see is another Unbinding waiting to happen. So yeah, basically, I will spoil here. I'm shocked if you haven't read Luck of the Draw and you're still watching this video. But Bryce and the 3 other heroes, if I can even remember their names, probably not going to. But Bryce being I would say the main character in Luck of the Draw, all 4 of them sacrificed their lives to, you know, save Sacred Grove and destroy the Gloamstone. So the fact that there's a Gleamstone pisses off Chugsy, and he's like, why do you have this? Like, my friends died because of the stone like that one. So yeah, it's kind of wild that there's sort of tension between Chugsy and Valerian because of this object. I think it's super important in the story. Anyway, continuing, he stood up and started leaving, then said, Valerian, you can call me by my full name from now on, because, again, his friends call him Chugsy, so he's not very friendly with the queen now. Continuing, I sighed and went back to the decrees that Mother hadn't declared. Maybe the elf had a point, but I worried for the future of my home without the stone. Its power could keep the citizens safe. He nearly compared me a dark cheat, which wasn't fair, but I knew why. Both stones shared similar traits and were completely opposite in nature. I'll keep it safe and hidden until it's needed, but for now I had a realm to run and decrees to make. One in particular caught my eye, so I decided to bring its attention to Sanctuary. I gathered everyone in town and exclaimed, Citizens of Sacred Grove, I have a decree to make. I hereby declare Sanctuary a refuge for all realms. For those who have nowhere else to go, let my home be your home. When all is lost and you are afraid of losing hope, I will keep you all safe. Everyone cheered, and that's why I knew Yanni could have made a huge difference if she was still alive. But she'll still be here in spirit as long as I follow in her footsteps to ensure Sacred Grove has a bright future. So, this last part, I swear to God, took me forever to write. Like, I was trying to figure out, okay, so there's these decrees. What is Valerian gonna make? So I figure, like, hey, she's the one who opened up the barrier and the entrance to Glimmer Deep. Clearly, she's got to be the one to be like, hey, Sanctuary is a refuge for all. So anyone from all over can come to this place. So yeah, kind of an interesting first story. I think it was a good one. The next few stories, like, again, they're gonna be, every story is different. Not all of them are the same. They kind of like vary in themes. So yeah, that was the first story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, read Luck of the Draw if you haven't. I'm assuming you have if you're watching this video, but thank you guys for watching. If you did, I appreciate it a ton, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.